XDefiant is a fun game, and the time I have spent on it has been great, but that doesn't mean it's a perfect game. XDefiant, like all games, has its flaws, but the game is fun and free to play, so if you like FPS games, I'd recommend at least trying it. So to start the video, I'm going to talk about the good points of the game first, then we'll go into the negatives later. The first good point about XDefiant for me, and the one that is the most important, is that the SBMM/EBMM, or whatever you want to call it, doesn't feel so punishing like a lot of modern games like Call of Duty or even Halo Infinite do. In Halo Infinite, I'm above average thanks to the many years I've played the series. So anytime my more casual friends play some PvP with me, they tend to get absolutely destroyed, which ends up being a negative for me because they tend to stop playing Halo with me, which hurts my experience with the game, and it hurts their experience too. I've also been on the flip side of that, and I've played with a friend of mine who is leaps and bounds better than me, and those Halo lobbies with him are just absolutely brutal and not enjoyable to play. So it's nice to see XDefiant go against the grain on that front and go with a more classic old school SBMM system like we saw in older FPS games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, not the newest one but the one from 2009, because you shouldn't be punished for playing with your friends in social non-ranked playlists. The next good point about XDefiant is that it's just a fun game to play. Everything from the gameplay, game modes, and especially the maps have been good in my opinion. None of the factions so far have been overpowered compared to the others. The weapons all seem pretty viable, and the map selection hasn't been bad at all. In fact, my favorite XDefiant maps have been Emporium and Arena. I also like that we have a map voter so people can decide on which map that they want to play. If we had that in MWII or Modern Warfare 22, then I wouldn't have had to play the trash maps like Border Crossing, Black Gold, or Tyrak. I also wouldn't have had to play Slayer on launch site or Behemoth either if Halo Infinite launched with a map voter. It's also nice to see that they added player outlines to XDefiant because Call of Duty specifically has this issue where the graphics are so good and realistic that players tend to blend way too much with the environment for my liking. So I'd get taken out by an enemy that I couldn't even see, which was just frustrating since to me it felt like a cheap death. And it happened enough that I eventually just stopped playing Call of Duty altogether. So it's nice to see that XDefiant adopted the same system Halo Infinite has, because it's not a problem I have on those specific games. The last good point I will talk about with XDefiant is the fact that the game is free to play. Anytime that it costs nothing to try a game is a big positive to me, because if you don't end up liking it, that's fine, just uninstall it. But if you don't like a game that you pay for, then it can be a nightmare to get a refund depending on the platform you use. Now, let's talk about the negatives about the game, because even though I have been enjoying my time on XDefiant, I do think the game has its flaws that I hope get resolved sooner rather than later, and a discussion on them could help get those improvements done faster, or I could at least get some discussion about them. The first negative point is that the game doesn't have a dedicated Slayer or Team Deathmatch game mode. I am not a fan of objective game modes at all, unless it's a game mode like Search and Destroy in Call of Duty or Breakout in Halo 5. So the fact that XDefiant doesn't have a dedicated TDM playlist in the game is massively disappointing to me. The closest thing like TDM in XDefiant at the moment is Hotshot, which is an okay game mode, but I don't play FPS PvP multiplayer to collect tags. I play them to shoot people and assert my dominance with a good KD. And I'm not the only one, because TDM is always the most populated playlist in any FPS game usually. The next negative point against XDefiant for me is that the game is a hero shooter. I don't mind the way the game is currently. I actually think the balance is pretty good. But with all hero shooters, they will add more heroes, or in XDefiant's case, factions in the future. And when game companies do that, it screws up the balance of the game, which ends up limiting your gameplay options, because if you don't use the OP hero, then you will get dominated by the players who do. That's why I prefer non-hero shooter games, because you just don't have to worry about it. And I hope XDefiant proves me wrong on this point by keeping all the factions viable to play. And if there is a issue, I hope they can fix it fast. The last negative point I have about XDefiant is that I hate the monetization of the shop. The Fortnite monetization scheme sucks so much, and I hate that it has become the new industry standard. Literally everyone uses it, from Halo, COD, Fallout, ESO, Battlefield, Madden, and even Minecraft. I get that XDefiant is free to play and needs a way to make money to keep the game running and free, but they can make a user-friendly store that is straightforward, easy to use, and not scummy. Just look at the Black Ops 2 game store. To me, that is what the standard should be. I have videos on what makes the Fortnite monetization scheme bad, so I'm not going to go into it in this video. But if you want me to explain why I think it's bad, I'll have a video on the topic linked in the description for you to watch. Now, all I'm saying is that XDefiant can do way better and should do better because there is no reason to nickel and dime your consumers. Because if the game is good, people will support it monetarily. What do you guys think about XDefiant? Do you love it? Hate it? And does the game have a future, or will Ubisoft find a way to mess it up like they always do? Let me know in the comment section below, and...
I'm sorry, sir. It's time for you to leave.